Hello and welcome to the Yindy Game Awards 2025. The only gaming award show on the internet that literally no one gives a shit about. Just the way I like it. Means I'm free to talk about the games I want to, and more importantly, fuck with future historians. Jesus Christ, it has really been a year since I started streaming. It was during the 2024 Black Friday sales that I picked up all my streaming gear, and well, it's been an interesting journey to say the least. One filled with technical bugs, art scammers, and the new friends we made along the way. The point is, the channel is still very much in its raw experimental phase. I can take risks, change things up, and see what sticks. And yes, it's been fun, so I have no plans to stop anytime soon. In the spirit of experimentation, what I want to do for this end of year lineup is talk about all the games I played on stream this year. It's probably no surprise that Yahtzee and the folk over at Second Wind, formerly The Escapist, are some of my biggest influences. My streams in particular are heavily based off the Yahtzee's Tries format, picking up a new or old game that I'm curious about, giving my first impressions, or, just talking bollocks for a couple of hours. Now, there's no point in me recounting my top, bottom and blandest 5 games. Sod off to a competent YouTuber for that. Instead, I want to break everything down into 3 lists. New games that released in 2025, older games that I never played before, so I'm late to the party, and revisiting old classics. Remasters and remakes sometimes straddle the line between these categories. But what are you going to do? Report me to the internet police? I'll also be counting games that I played in December 2024, since that's the cutoff for the real Game Award nominations and when I actually started streaming. Okay, we understand the rules? Cool. Let's begin with our first category. Classic Games Revisited. Number 10. Oblivion Remastered. Ah yes, back to Cyrodiil, with this remaster of the 2006 classic responsible for opening the Pandora's box and unleashing predatory microtransaction monetization onto an unexpected gaming public. Now, don't get me wrong, The Elder Scrolls 6 Oblivion is a genuinely great game. The problem is, I've played it repeatedly to death back in the day. Vanilla, modded, and modded, well, to oblivion. In the end, I was an immortal god vampire with glowing wings in his own pocket dimension. It's absolutely worth playing if you were still a glint in the milkman's eye when it first came out, but for those of us who were there at the time, the experience is fundamentally unchanged, unsettling facial folds aside. And that's my issue with Oblivion Remastered. It's just a remaster. With so many other games and experiences vying for my time, I just couldn't justify sinking another 100 hours into something that I've already exhausted. Now, if it was a remake of Morrowind for a modern audience, that I'd be interested in. Number 9. Splatoon 3. It's always funny and slightly concerning to load my missus up with Skittles and E numbers, and then let her loose with a paint roller. But enough of what we get up to in the bedroom. Splatoon remains one of those games that we occasionally play together to terrorise the neighbours. Fun with friends, sure, but not something I find myself returning to on my own free time. Number 8. The Amiga A500. My Christmas present to myself last year, and a tribute to my dad. I'm hugely grateful to have access to so many of the early Amiga games I played with him back in the day. While this may sound obvious, it still takes me back just how different game philosophy was back then. Dad once told me that he didn't know how to save his games, so he stayed up every night for a week just to beat one of them. And at the time I thought, typical dad, didn't know how to save his game, only to later realise many of these games didn't have save functions at all. They were designed more like arcade games. And many long plays only clock in at a couple of hours, but they're hard as nails. You will start on Zone 1 Level 1 and you'll like it, bitch. Now get to it. The Amiga will always hold a special place in my collection, but apart from boring my future offspring someday, it's likely to remain a museum piece. 7. Dark Souls Remastered. I really don't know what I could say about Dark Souls that hasn't already been said a million times on the internet. But I was genuinely surprised by just how many people came up to me after the stream wanting to obsessively talk about it. It's a genre-defying classic for a reason. I've completed it multiple times, and it's probably one of my favourite, most played FromSoft games. I think I take it for granted now. Someone bringing it up to me is like saying, the Beatles were a good band, and I'm like, yeah, and water's wet. What's your point? Now, bring up Blasphemous, which I don't think gets nearly enough credit, and I will pin you down and chew your ear off for hours. Number 6. Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy Edition. I have a funny relationship with Magic the Gathering. That's a direct inverse of my relationship with Warhammer. I don't physically collect Magic cards, largely because my Warhammer plastic addiction takes care of that. But unlike Warhammer, I do find myself obsessively playing Magic Online for a season or two whenever a deck really clicks for me. Cue the Final Fantasy crossover. I even managed to rope Tavares into the addiction, even if the result was me thrashing his arse repeatedly on stream. I did enjoy it while I played it, but once the deck was complete, it was time to move on. 5. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver Remastered. Much like Oblivion, the Legacy of Kain series is probably the second most fictional universe I know the most about, with Warhammer being the first. I've played every game multiple times, memorised the script, and once even tried to convince one of my high school teachers to let me stage a rendition of Soul Reaver 2 as a school play. The reason why the Soul Reaver Remaster ranks higher than Oblivion is simple. Getting old Soul Reaver games running on modern systems is an exercise in extreme frustration. So it's genuinely nice to have a fully playable Soul Reaver 1 and 2 accessible in a portable format and functioning in 2025 that includes the Steam Deck and the Switch. Even if the new character models look a bit Fisher-Price for my liking, but at least you could always turn the modern graphics off. Now, if we could just get the same treatment for Blood Omen and Defiance, that would be great. You can keep Nosgoth though. Some things are best left forgotten. Number 4. Baldur's Gate 3. Another modern classic I've already completed solo, but it's been genuinely great revisiting the Sword Coast with Tavares and Mad Mike from the Tuesday Gaming Group. It's been a joy running around with my perpetually semi-nude, high-strength barbarian Tyros, though to quote my mother, she could do without the homoerotic undertones. Though, thanks Mum for watching my streams at least. Check out our ongoing series if you want more, and yes, Tavares is absolutely carrying the team. Number 3. Devil May Cry. So, the new Devil May Cry anime dropped this year. Yeah, it was fine. Painfully obvious nostalgia bait aimed squarely at millennials, as one of the last demographic with any perceived disposable income. I mean, why else would you pull Limp Bizkit out of the retirement home? In short, 3 is clearly the best, 5 is excellent, 1 is a flawed classic, 4 is fine, and we don't talk about 2. And yes, I didn't hate the Team Ninja reboot. Still good, still a classic. Dante is still daddy. Number 2. Simon the Sorcerer. A defining game of my childhood, and arguably more influential than some of the objectively better LucasArts point-and-click adventure games of the same era. Simon the Sorcerer cemented much of my early sense of humour alongside Red Dwarf and Blackadder. Chris Barry is a comic genius, so of course I dedicated one of my cozy streams to replaying it. And I was genuinely impressed to realise I can now complete the entire game without a walkthrough. Number 1. Simon the Sorcerer 2. Simon the Sorcerer 2 stands as one of my all-time favourites, and possibly serves as a distant inception point for what would eventually become half-wits. It's off-colour, racier, and more sexist than is comfortable today, and even for the time. But it never feels like it's punching down, largely because Simon himself is portrayed as an insufferable prick who constantly gets what he deserves. I'll be replaying Simon 2 until my dying days. That said, I'm still genuinely pissed off at myself for needing a guide to get the tinderbox in the bloody pirate ship. Bad Yindy! You should know better. Sadly, the rest of the series went downhill from there. But if you've never played it, it's absolutely worth checking out the staple of British comedy gaming. Well, that does it for classic games I've played. Next up, we'll take a look at older games that I'm late to the party with, that have been out for a while, that I've only just gotten around to playing. Late to the party. 20. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. Let's kick things off with a nice, simple, easy one that absolutely no one remembers or cares about. The only reason it's even on this list is because I technically streamed it at the end of 2024. Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. The definitive final form of dull, boring, repetitive, live service dross. The fondest thing this game might be remembered for is it tangibly marked a shift in the tide where AAA publishers finally realised that the live service model had become unsustainable. Something that the gaming community had been screaming about and nailing to bricks and throwing through their windows for years. And yet here we are. What a shame that this is the combination of the beloved Batman Arkham series and Rocksteady's legacy, who are apparently still a thing? I assumed they got culled along with the hundreds of other studios during the corporate layoff apocalypse. 19. Chained Echoes. A quirky, admittedly very pretty pixel art game with big stompy steampunk robots. It definitely piqued my interest. Gifted to me by Tavares for my birthday, we ended up playing it together on stream. While I did enjoy what I played, it failed to properly sink its hooks into me and earn main game status. The one thing I will always remember from this stream though, is those funny Rayman looking mosquito enemies with the boxing gloves, only to read the enemy flavor text and realise those weren't boxing gloves at all. They're its testicles. Well, you won't find that in a Final Fantasy game. That's the sort of subversive humour and soul that we need more in games. I'll get back to it eventually, probably on a rainy summer afternoon when I've got nothing else to play and stumble across it again. 18. Mouthwashing. I think we can all agree that games are art, and the objective of art is to make you feel something. That something doesn't necessarily need to be fun, joy, or happiness. Sometimes it can be gut-wrenching unease, revulsion, disgust, or discomfort. Cue mouthwashing. The indie horror darling that was doing the rounds. Did I enjoy it? No, not really. Did it make me feel the emotions it was trying to induce? Oh, absolutely. So I guess it succeeded on its own terms. Yes, it will live on and haunt me at 3 AM for years to come. But then I remember that bastard in graveyard section and I end up flying into a murderous rage. Worth playing once for the experience, I suppose, though not one I'm ever likely to revisit. 17. Still Wakes the Deep. Another walking simulator survival horror game, only this time with questionable Scottish accents. Did I enjoy this more than mouthwashing? Yeah. I'm a big fan of John Carpenter's The Thing and weird twisted body horror. The attention to detail regarding life on a North Sea oil rig was also immersive, not that I've ever been on one, but I know plenty of people who have, being from the northeast of Scotland. It's a bit light on the actual gameplay and puzzles, but that's not exactly what the Chinese room is known for, is it? I mean, you wouldn't expect them to make a sequel to one of the most highly anticipated cult classic RPGs of all time, would you? Foreshadowing is a literary device where 16. The Order 1886. Having just come off the back of playing 200-hour JRPGs this summer, I was desperate for something short, snacky, and ultimately disposable. Like a cheeky midday wank during your lunch break. And by Jove, The Order 1886 fit the bill. Sure, it's a load of old wank, but it didn't overstay its welcome, and it gave me a shallow, fleeting sense of achievement once it was over. Passed on to me by my dad when I borrowed his PS4 in the run-up to buying my own PS5, it had been sitting on my shelf as a forgotten relic of a bygone age. So I finally played it. And yeah, it was fine. Basically Gears of War with handlebar mustaches, werewolves and Cockney accents. However, it did end even more abruptly than even I was expecting. What I thought was the penultimate boss fight leading into the final act, instead ended up just being a few QuickTime events before then cutting straight to credits. Like someone walking in on you in the toilet and interrupting you mid-lunch break just as you were getting to the good bit. 15. Sword of the Berserk. Guts' Rage. Michael Bell? Cam Clark? Earl Bean? It's basically a reunion of PS1 era voice acting royalty. All trapped in an obscure Dreamcast exclusive that also happens to be one of the earliest Western adaptations of Berserk. With a completely original story penned by Nomura himself, Sword of the Berserk Guts' Rage is one of those weird cultural touchstones. The primordial soup in which games like Dark Souls may eventually emerge. It's also clearly the origin point for your oversized weapon bouncing off walls in tight corridors. Also, the main villain is called Lord Balzac. 69 out of 10, perfect game, no notes, even if the music did get my stream copyright claimed. 14. Dragon Age, The Veilguard. This game got a lot of shit. Some deserved, some not. Was it clearly hastily reworked, designed, born from committee, driven corporate AAA hackery? Yeah, of course. It was originally meant to be yet another live service game, but in a rare moment of self-reflection, EA realised that maybe fans of a traditionally single-player franchise with deep mechanics and strong characters wouldn't want that. So what do the fans want? Well, clearly not this. Was it the offensively terrible game the internet made it out to be? No, it wasn't. I played it to completion, so it must have done something right. But was it a bad Dragon Age game? Now, that's closer to the nub of the issue. In the original Dragon Age Origin, you had 9 different opening chapters based on your character's background. In the Veilguard, I counted precisely 2 branching path choices, both ultimately resulting in one companion leaving passive-aggressive notes around base camp and not inviting me to the slumber party. Fine for what it is, but it's more indicative of the mediocrity of the modern AAA gaming space than some grand, sinister, woke left agenda. Nice hair physics though. Better luck next time, BioWare, under your new corporate owners, the Saudi government. 13. Neo. Another recommendation from Tavares. A Team Ninja Souls-like reimagining of William Adams as a conventionally attractive, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Irishman instead of the colonial English bastard that he actually was. An interesting take on the Souls formula, and one I might eventually play through with Tavares before the 3rd game drops. Not sure it's something I stick with on my own though. Number 12. Pacific Drive. Another game I've been meaning to get round to for ages. Having just passed my driving test IRL, I was keen to drive off into the irradiated sunset of the exclusion zone, chased by pale waxy mannequins trying to steal my hubcaps. But enough about Airdrie. Pacific Drive is an interesting indie game with a lot of potential. But so far, it hasn't quite sunk its hooks into me. I think if it ran a bit smoother on the Steam Deck, or had a VR mode, then it would be incredible. But as it stands, I only really just wrapped my head around the gameplay loop by the end of the stream, and haven't picked it up since. Number 11. Hollow Knight. Another cult indie classic that's been festering in my backlog for nearly a decade. I tried to play Hollow Knight before, and while I'll freely admit that it's gorgeous, I didn't stick with it. Though, with Silksong mockingly slapping its bum at me on the horizon, I finally pulled up my big boy trousers and gave it another go. And yeah, as a 2D Metroidvania Souls-like, I can absolutely see why it's beloved. It's just a bit too heavy on the precise jumping gauntlets and a bit too reliant on the gank buggery squads for my taste. Maybe Silksong will address these issues. Foreshadowing is a literate device where... Number 10. Vagrant Story. Another game that's always fascinated me, thanks to its deep, complex, well-written story, memorable characters, assless chaps, and bizarre fashion sense even by Square Enix standards. Vagrant's story always felt inaccessible to me, due to the sheer amount of reading. But it's one of Tavares' favourites, and for his birthday, I promised that we'd finally check it out. It's clearly a product of Square's raw, experimental late 90s phase, where they were still figuring a lot of things out. Though, if they ever make a full remake, or even just do a remaster with full voice acting, like what they added to Final Fantasy Tactics, that's actually set in the same universe, I'd be all over that. As it stands, I'll just wait for the inevitable 3-hour Josh Strife Hayes retro review. Number 9. Robocop Rogue City. Robocop is one of those films like Finding Nemo, Pulp Fiction, or the original Mad Max that I've probably seen, just not in the right order. It's one of those movies that's always been on in the background when me and a mate were sharing a bottle of Malibu and inventing stupid cocktail ideas. I don't think I've ever actually sat down and watched it properly. From what I do recall though, Robocop Rogue City absolutely nails the retro sci-fi 80s neoliberal Reagan era fear that every inner city teenager who so much as smoked a drug would inevitably spike their hair into colourful mohawks, join a street gang, and get their head blown clean off by state-funded law enforcement. Is it a good game? Yeah, it's a competent shooter that plays well. But if we can get the same treatment from my other favourite satirical, authoritarian future lawman, Judge Dredd, then we're really talking. Number 8. Stranger of Paradise. Final Fantasy Origin. The reason Tavares was keen to get me into Neo was because we had both started playing Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. Developed by the same team, it's an interesting reinterpretation of the original Final Fantasy. And by reinterpretation, I mean they took some extensive artistic liberties. For example, I don't remember Final Fantasy I being set in the modern day. There's also a weird emphasis on fisting for the main character, Jack, who I'm not entirely convinced didn't hit his head and forget that he wasn't in a Warhammer 40k game. I hope that one day he does eventually find Chaos, or even figure out what exactly Chaos even is. 7. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is one of the first games I owned on the Switch, and it's the poster child for the it gets good 20 hours in School of Game Design. Once you unlock the chain attack, and the combat system actually works as intended. And not just because of the weirdly horny bunny mummy. It's an odd game, play it for yourself. It also ties into Xenoblade Chronicles 1 in a clever way, despite being set in a completely different universe. So I was definitely invested to see how Xenoblade Chronicles 3 would round out the series. Set during an eternally resetting war, Xeno 3 lacks the bizarre but striking setup of the first game, which took place on the body of two massive titans. It also lacks the weird horniness and genuinely engrossing political drama of the second game. The characters are likeable enough, and it does successfully bookend the trilogy, though I still need to play the DLC. Though it's probably the weakest of the three main Chronicles games, including X, but it's worth playing if you're a Xenoblade fan. Number 6. Metaphor Rifantasio. I like Persona 5. I also like putting on my underwear straight from the dryer while it's still warm, and chocolate sundaes. Continuing this list of statements that will surprise absolutely no one, in order for me to properly get into a Persona or SMT adjacent game, I need to block out my entire summer. Metaphor Rifantasio is basically Persona with a political fantasy twist, interesting characters, an intriguing setting, and a lovably hateable main villain. It's just so bloody long! It absolutely hooked me and was my main game for a couple of months, but by God did it overstay its welcome by the end. Yindy pro tip: plan your entire day around the ending. Just when you think you're heading for the final boss, you've got another 10 hours to go. Good game? Yeah. Would I play it again? No, I'll just wait for the anime, mate. Number 5. Alien Dark Descent. The Alien franchise has taken some weird turns over its nearly 50-year history. But Alien's Dark Descent actually has some genuinely interesting ideas. It's not quite an isometric RPG or an XCOM style tactics game. With more of an emphasis on revisiting maps over multiple deployments, it's clearly trying something different. I've also seen clips of later levels and cutscenes, and it looks like the game is really leaning into the franchise's weirder side. And frankly, I'm here for it. I want to play more, but it sadly lost main game status to the next entry on this list, and I haven't gone back to it yet. I probably need to restart anyway, because as interesting as the mechanics are, I've completely forgotten about the nuances of how to play. Maybe I'll give it another go while rewatching Alien Earth. Number 4. Kingdom Come: Deliverance. I've tried several times to get into Kingdom Come: Deliverance. I love the idea of an immersive system-driven Bethesda-style historical medieval RPG, but every time I tried, I bounced off that bloody lockpicking minigame and the combat system. Realistic? Sure. Painful to play? Absolutely. So it sat largely untouched in my backlog for years. Add to that the knowledge of a mandatory combat-heavy boss fight that you get locked into regardless of your build, and I just kept putting it off. But with all the hype around Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I decided to give it another go. And this time, it finally clicked. Once I wrapped my head around the lockpicking and the combat mechanics, it started scratching that old Skyrim itch. Sneaking around Rattay at night, breaking into people's houses and stealing everyone's shit just to level my skills, felt weirdly like a modern Thief game. And that mandatory boss fight? Yeah, turns out I overprepared. I poked him in the eye once and he went down like a sack of potatoes. Bit anticlimactic, really. A bit like the ending. The story builds to a crescendo and then abruptly ends with a to be continued. Good thing I don't have to wait 7 years for the sequel. Number 3. Shadows of Doubt. I love hard-boiled detective stories. Walking the filthy streets at night under flickering neon signs, ducking into Lucy's diner for a coffee, warming your bones with whatever coins you manage to fish out of the gutter while waiting for the next murder to happen. Living in Glasgow was hard, but good practice for this. Shadow of Doubt authentically simulates the experience. A completely procedurally generated city, hundreds of NPCs, any of whom could be your next killer. The game genuinely rewards clever detective work and out-the-box thinking. It can get frustrating when you hit a dead end and realise that there's no guide or walkthrough for your specific case. All you can do is wait for the murderer to strike again and hope that this time he slips up. It's prone to a few immersion-breaking bugs, and after enough cases you start to recognise the underlying structure and are able to brute force many of the solutions. Best enjoyed in short bursts, then put down and revisited fresh. Still, it's absolutely a game I keep coming back to whenever I need inspiration for a detective story. 2. Ratchet & Clank: Rifts Apart. I never thought I'd get into a Ratchet & Clank game, but sometimes you just need an uncomplicated, swashbuckling, sci-fi adventure with wisecracking woodland critters and an operatic Saturday morning cartoon villain. That's exactly what Rift Apart was for me. Originally a PS5 launch title, I played the PC port instead. It had some glitches, and clearly wasn't the seamless Rift jumping showcase it was designed to be on Sony's new hardware, but I did get to use my DualSense controller on the PC, and ended up playing it through to completion while lying half dead on my couch with the latest strain of superflu that's been doing the rounds. It even convinced me to throw on the movie in the background while I was painting up Warhammer. Not sure I'm rushing to play the rest of the series though. Number 1. Alan Wake 2. This one genuinely surprised me. I played Alan Wake back in the day, and thought it was fine. I definitely played Control, and I even have the PlayStation achievement clips to prove that I finished it. And yet, somehow, it completely deleted itself from my brain. I remember something about a talking gun and the main character becoming the new chief for no other reason than she happened to be standing over the corpse of the previous chief, possibly as some kind of Tim Curry Santa Claus arrangement. Anyway, I tried Alan Wake 2 and was really struggling with it. Even during the stream, it just wasn't clicking. So why is Alan Wake 2 number 1 on this list? Well, because when I went back to it, it did suddenly click. And finally I understood the gameplay loop and the level structure, and it all just made sense. Unsurprisingly, this was about around the time of the first big musical number. After that, I just couldn't put it down. I was genuinely excited to get home and play it. I even unhooked and transported my PS5 to my parents' house so I could finish it over a weekend. Something I never do. I normally just bring my Switch or Steam Deck. Josh Strife-Hayes once called Sam Lake a genius in his Alan Wake review. I didn't see it at the time, and I didn't fully gel with Control. And I felt the same way about Alan Wake 2, until I finally got it. I haven't played the new Game Plus content yet, so I haven't got the true ending, but I'm saving that for a rainy day. But I did go out and buy the DLC, which is also something I hardly ever do. Let that be my strongest endorsement. I might even give Control a second playthrough. And that does it for older games that I finally got round to playing in 2025, but we've got one more list left. Games that came out this year and I played on launch. Games released in 2025. 18. Atomfall. This one I feel I genuinely didn't give a fair shake. And that partly might be my fault for turning off all the waypoint markers in exploration mode right at the start. That said, I can't deny that me and Tavares gave up on Atomfall just an hour into a 2-hour stream. Once we realised the rest of the stream was likely just going to be me aimlessly wandering around a muddy English field like the day after Glastonbury. We ended up switching over to Blue Prince instead. It's a game I mean to go back to, just to check whether that first impression was unfair, amplified by the pressure of trying to be entertaining on stream. Also, Rebellion are that weirdly stubborn British developer who survived several nuclear winters or corporate AAA layoffs. So clearly, something's keeping them going. Sniper Elite and Zombies must be doing some seriously heavy lifting. 17. Avowed. Avowed frustrates me. On paper, I should love it, and I have genuinely tried several times to get into it. Obsidian keeps getting held up as the modern BioWare, with deep writing and interesting characters, and yet I've never really gelled with one of their games. I never finished Fallout New Vegas, despite playing Fallout 3 to death. I did finish The Outer Worlds, however, but I couldn't tell you a damn thing about it beyond the guy who looked like Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty. Oh, and the fact I was 1 point short of the dialogue option that let you talk down the final boss, locking me into a Thunderdome style final fight despite being a charisma focused character. It was like turning up to a fetish party wearing my D&D gear. I tried Pillars of Eternity several times, but all the reading and complex menus defeated me. So here was Avowed, Obsidian's chance to win me over. A first-person system-driven Skyrim-like RPG set in the Pillars universe. Wait, what do you mean it's not a systems-driven RPG, but a combat-focused action game? And why are you forcing me to wear this hideous plant pot on my head? No, I don't care if it's for story reasons. So yeah, Avowed failed to hook me. The combat's fast, frenetic and fun, but I just can't connect with the art style or the companion characters. Maybe that'll change when I unlock the pink furry nympho. Number 16. Monster Hunter Wilds. It took me a long time to get my head around the Monster Hunter appeal, but once it clicked, I thoroughly enjoyed Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch. Side note, That's also when I discovered the spiffing Brit, and shortly thereafter developed a Pavlovian response to Yorkshire tea whenever I'm out committing monster genocide. I've tried Monster Hunter Worlds a couple of times, but Wilds felt like a fresh opportunity to jump in at the ground level with the Monster Hunter community. Hello? Is anyone still here? Yeah, despite being perfectly functional, the game seemed to die shortly after launch. And after completing the main campaign, I've not picked it up or really thought about it since. That said, the Monster Hunter stream did reignite the eternal debate of this channel. Do dragons have buttholes or cloacas? Leave your answers in the comments below. Number 15. Pokemon Legends AZ. I had genuinely high hopes for the Pokemon Legends spin-off after Arceus. While I didn't love defeating bosses by pelting them with berries, or crouching in bushes for hours like I was outside your mum's house at the weekend trying to catch my 50th fucking Rapidash, it was clearly experimental and shaking up the formula. So, AZ. Yeah, the real-time combat is a genuine improvement, but what's with the tiny glorified hubcap of a city that the entire game is based in? It feels like they took precisely the wrong lessons from Arceus. And would the addition of voice acting in this day and age really been so hard? Also, if you're going to put my Dungeon Master persona in your game, I at least want a credit. I haven't touched it since the stream, and I'm far more likely to go back to Arceus before giving this one another shot. 14. Mario Kart World. What's there to say really? It's Mario Kart, but an open world. Not that I played much of the open world content. Fun with friends. You'll probably kill a few hours on the first playthrough, then either never think about it again, or go back to Mario Kart 8, because that's where all your pleb friends are who still don't own a Switch 2 yet are. 13. 2 Point Museum. I loved the old Bullfrog games, and despite putting up hundreds of hours into Dungeon Keeper and Theme Park World, I somehow never played Theme Hospital. So imagine my delight when its spiritual successor 2 Point came along. I enjoyed the quirky Wallace and Gromit style visuals and oddball humour, but I never actually finished it. Then again, I never finished either of the Dungeon Keeper games either, so I suppose that's on brand. It's great for a chill, cozy afternoon when all you want to do is turn your brain off and listen to some lo-fi background music and occasionally chuckle at the sarcastic voice announcer lines. At least the first 500 times you hear them. That said, if I get the itch, I'm still more likely to boot up 2 Point Hospital and recreate the cast of Scrubs, or fire up 2 Point Campus and open up the Yindy Business School of Catanomics before returning to Museum, despite it being the newest and most refined. 12. Hollow Knight Silksong. So Silksong finally launched this year, terrifying indie developers everywhere like your mum at a buffet. Speaking as someone who only finished Hollow Knight this year, and no, I didn't get the true ending, I can confidently say that Silksong is more Hollow Knight. Just as beautiful, just as well designed, and just as brutally punishing. If anything, it leads even heavier into the precision platforming gauntlets and gank squad fuckery. If you loved Hollow Knight and you wanted more, this is exactly that. However, if, like me, you burned out before even finishing your first full playthrough, you might want to hold off for another 7 or 8 years, until the voices in your head return and start telling you to start hurting yourself again. 11. Alien Rogue Incursion. Alien, but in VR, with slightly janky hat mechanics. Ever wanted to know what it's like to be face-hugged while wearing 2 pounds of expensive electronics strapped to your skull? Well, now you can. It's a fun, atmospheric VR survival horror game that, jank and all, absolutely recreates that tense, claustrophobic 6 meters, man! That's inside the room! Game over, man! Game over! Feeling of the original films. Worth checking out if, like me, You live in an ivory tower with nearly a grand's worth of VR hardware that sits there mostly unused outside of extended wank sessions, and porn games that you refund after 20 minutes, feeling ashamed, empty and disappointed at yourself. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. Yeah, good game, I had fun with it on stream. Slightly weird decision to cut the game in half and sell part 2 later though. Number 10. Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered. Yes, I know technically this belongs on the other list, but that's the problem when it comes to remasters, remakes and reimaginings. I never played the original, though I did enjoy Final Fantasy Tactics in the GBA back before puberty hit, when my Game Boy didn't feel like a tic-tac in my giant man hands. I've always planned to emulate the original, but the addition of full voice acting, especially for us dyslexics out there, makes this the definitive final version. Tavares was particularly creaming his knickers over this one, having played the original about 1,000 times alongside Vagrant Story. For me, it was fascinating to see the original blueprint that would later define that one Square Enix game that they keep remaking under different names in that 2.5D pixel art style. Things like Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, Bravely Default, etc. I am looking forward to playing it properly, but it's currently suffering from my ongoing JRPG fatigue and has been relegated to the backlog. I'll get to you eventually. Number 9. Doom: The Dark Ages. Doom: The Dark Ages felt confused. They started taking Doom Guy way too seriously, giving him a tragic backstory and then dumping him in the store brand grimdark Warhammer 40k knockoff setting, instead of letting him remain the barely contained psychotic avatar of the player's own pent-up rage. It's a perfectly functional modern FPS, but it lacks the tight design and relentless kinetic energy of Doom 2016. Worth checking out on Game Pass if you have access, but I still recommend Doom 2016 over it every time. Still, it could be worse. At least it didn't hit its head, lock itself in a cupboard, and think it was Doom 3. Also, Guillermo del Toro called, he wants his Jaegers back. Donkey Kong Bananza. Number 8. Donkey Kong Bananza changed me. I could no longer walk down the fruit and veg aisle of my local supermarket without loudly proclaiming, "Ooh, banana," like a German porn star, much to the confusion of the elderly woman standing next to me. One of the first real reasons to pick up a Switch 2, Bananza is colourful, kinetic, kid-friendly violence as you tear up the environment using some genuinely impressive tech. It then inevitably dresses DK up like a furry-coated male stripper, which could make for some very tense conversations around the Christmas dinner table this year. It was the perfect turn your brain off gaming in handheld mode while I binged a series I was meaning to get round to. But did I enjoy it as much as Astro Bot on the PS5 the year before? No. And as impressive as the destructible scenery is, it's uncharacteristically janky for a Nintendo game. The camera regularly gets stuck in deeply uncomfortable places. Still, at least DK won't need a prostate exam this year. Am I right? Number 7. Blueprints. I played a lot of it off stream with my sister, and it was genuinely rewarding to finally have that aha moment click into place, or for the right combination of rooms to reveal a new secret. That said, admitted shite bags that we are, we eventually got frustrated with the RNG and just looked up the ending in a perfect run on YouTube. Still, good game, worth checking out. 2. Number 6. Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Okay, hear me out. Of course Bloodlines 2 was never going to live up to Bloodlines 1. And of course the Chinese Room, a studio best known for atmospheric walking simulators, was going to struggle with the sequel to one of the most beloved RPGs of all time. So, is Bloodlines 2 a good Bloodlines game? No. But is it a good Vampire, or even Vampire the Masquerade game? Well, honestly, yes. I've said this before. The Chinese room absolutely nails the atmosphere and the writing. The issue is that the RPG systems feel shallow and largely token. That said, does it live up to the fantasy of making you feel like a badass vampire? Absolutely. And for that alone, it handily beats whatever the hell they were trying to do with Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song. Worth playing if you can get it on sale, but you probably won't squeeze out more than one playthrough out of it. Number 5. Metroid Prime 4. I almost put this at number 4, but on reflection, it really belongs here at 5. I saw a headline recently calling Metroid Prime 4 the Dragon Age Veilguard of the Prime series, presumably as an insult, and I'm not sure I agree. Metroid Prime was a masterpiece, on par with Dark Souls thanks to dense level design and atmosphere. That said, despite owning original copies of Metroid Prime 2 and 3, I can't remember a damn thing about them, beyond the weird light and dark mechanic that haunted mid-2000s game design. Metroid Prime 4 runs well, plays well, and at the time of writing, it's currently my main game. I'm enjoying it, and I'm far more likely to remember this one 20 years from now than I ever was Metroid Primes 2 and 3. Does it have issues? Sure. It's more linear than I'd like, the desert bike section could be cut entirely, and there's a baffling fixation on questionable support NPCs and vagina doors. Is it to Metroid what Breath of the Wild was to Zelda? No. But is it a solid Metroid game that could potentially hook a new generation that weren't even a glint in the milkman's eye when the last one released in 2007? Yeah. Worth picking up and then go play the original trilogy. Also, could be worse. Could be Metroid Other M 2. Number 4. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Picking right up from where KCD 1 left off, yet somehow not letting us transfer over our saves. So you're forced to redefine your version of Henry via opening dialogue choices. Come on lads, The Witcher and Mass Effect figured this out 2 decades ago. That aside, this is exactly what a sequel should be. Building on the original's foundation and making everything better. I'm not that far into it yet, but I'm excited to properly dig into this one once my schedule clears. Combat has been simplified, just enough to make it more intuitive, while also adding some more weirdly accurate and often tedious systems like blacksmithing. Oh, and Henry and Hans Capon's relationship remains one of gaming's greatest double acts. Medieval Laurel and Hardy. I'm very much looking forward to whatever drunken misadventures involving me, Henry, and the local priest awaits. I swear, I'll get back to you eventually. Number 3. The Outer Worlds 2. So Obsidian got a second chance to win me over this year. And by golly did they actually pull it off. I was this close to giving Starfield another go, with its vast, empty procedural worlds and lifeless waxwork NPCs. Then The Outer Worlds 2 swooped in with its Technicolor Dreamcoat, biting political satire, and genuinely meaningful RPG systems. I loved watching my flawed protagonists evolve, and how dialogue options reflect both the skills I invested in and the ones I was locked out of by my dumb character flaw. The result was some genuinely laugh-out-loud dialogue choices and story beats. Who knew that a well-written, handcrafted RPG with interesting characters and mechanics was exactly what I wanted? Hope you're taking notes, Veilguard and Bloodlines 2. Sorry, what's that? The ending? Oh, I don't know, I haven't finished it. Truth be told, I got halfway through the game and caught up with the main villain lady that I'd been chasing up till that point, where the game suddenly went, "Congratulations! That's the game universe properly opened up now. Go anywhere! Do anything! Maybe even convince the ultra space capitalists and space communists to work together and... wait, where are you going? Huh? Who, me? Oh, sorry, Metroid just dropped and I've also just reactivated my subscription to Final Fantasy XIV, so I'll maybe be back when that runs out. Number 2. The Altars. Another experimental, genuinely unique experience, and I felt that way before the musical number. They say that hell is being locked in a room with your family for all eternity, but I'll raise you one better, being stuck in a room with alternative versions of yourself who all made better life choices, and are now passive-aggressively ignoring you because you ate their last hydroponically grown carrot that they had called dibs on. It's well written, thought-provoking, and genuinely tense as you juggle survival, relationships, and logistics, all while racing to escape the zone before the sun cooks you all alive. Except the scientist and the engineer have fallen out again, and the miner has committed suicide for the 3rd time this week, despite the fact I literally just grew him a new bloody arm! Sorry. If you haven't played it, it's absolutely worth checking out. Even if the big moral choice in the middle of Act 2 didn't feel like that big a deal to me, but then again, maybe I'm just the asshole. Number 1. Clair Obscura, Expedition 33. Yes, the obvious winner. I love how there's now a genuine backlash online to this thing winning too many awards. Well, I guess I'm not helping with that. The big ticket game that cleaned up at the real Game Awards turned out to be a genuinely exceptional experience. One that pushed gaming forward as an art form, all the while flipping the bird at the AAA games industry. Engaging characters, stunning art direction, an outstanding musical score, and a deeply emotional story that balances devastation with moments of warmth and humour, all backed by strong, engaging mechanics. Alright mate, you can stop showing off now. Clair Obscura Expedition 33 is one of those games that will define an era in games development. If you haven't played it yet, why are you still here? Stop what you're doing, go play it. So that you can say that you were there before the inevitable wave of Eurojank JRPG knockoffs flood the market. Personally, I'm looking forward to the German one scored by Rammstein. So, Clair Obscura Expedition 33. Here's one more totally meaningless award to add to your ever-growing Dragon Horde. The 2025 Yindy Awards Game of the Year. Well, now that that's done, I need to go drink my own body weight in Malibu. Have a great new year, everyone. Here's hoping that 2026 is considerably less on fire, although I wouldn't hold out much hope. And if you need something to watch over the Christmas break, might I suggest a humble D&D show featuring 4 halfwits and a DM? I hear it's quite good. And a new episode just dropped. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Yindy, out.